Hello and welcome all into the MO podcast. You're here with me, Consummation San, and my lovely co-host,
Atreya.
And today we're going to be talking about the Axeman of New Orleans. Yeah, this is, I mean, it's not amusing, but it's an interesting one, let's say.
It is, yeah.
So, 1918, for an 18-month period, New Orleans was put under a reign of terror by a killer with, I'm going to say a tin ear, because just not my kind of thing, really, my kind of music. But he was a big fan of jazz, it would seem. He killed 6 people and injured a further 6 in his attack. He pretty much used the same MO for every attack, which was he'd break into someone's house at night time. He'd either cut out the panel of a back door and squeeze through, or get through an open window, and he would attack them while they slept using either an axe or a straight razor, which, to add insult to injury, was usually the victim's own.
Stolen from their own house.
Yeah. Now, maybe New Orleans, maybe 1918, maybe that kind of era was different, but I've never owned my own axe.
I know, and I kind of feel like I'm missing out.
In fairness, I've got a straight razor, but I only got one of them recently. So, I mean, I know they didn't have Gillettes back in them days and straight razors were all the go, but...
Yeah, and you'd think that after the first maybe couple, that people would stop keeping axes. Be like, get that axe sold. You can chop wood with someone else. Chop the wood with a straight razor. Make it blunt.
Just try and, or lock it away or something.
Yeah, stop leaving it out and easy access.
Yeah, only use it at Christmas times and special occasions.
Yeah.
Yeah. The murders weren't monetary motivated, and nothing was ever taken from the victims. The victims were just... They did all have most of them had one thing in common, but it just seemed like a haphazard attacks. There was no kind of pattern to it that could be discerned. And on the March 13th, 1919, he actually wrote to the New Orleans paper to take credit for the killings and to extol the virtues of jazz music.
I love this.
Now, this... Right. I'll be honest, I've not read Dante, but I think this would be in there. So the letter goes, Hottest hell, March the 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal of New Orleans, the Axeman. They never caught me, and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleans and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe.
Bloody axes.
Besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. He's a right one, this lad, isn't he?
He's a right one.
If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offence at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. Don't know what that's about. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleans think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am.
They're not wrong.
Yeah. I mean, he actually says which I am in the letter, so okay. But I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens and the worst, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, I don't, what, like, earthly time, for a start, there's loads of time zones, right? And for a second, does the moon have a clock? I don't. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time, on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinitive mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person should be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I've just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going...
It's like an April Fool's.
It's bizarre. Why? It's just, yeah, he's like, I bet I can get him to do this. This is a bar bet, this.
It definitely is. And it worked.
Two drunks at the end of the bar, like, I bet you can't get everyone in New Orleans to play jazz on one night at one time.
Fucking 20 quid says I can.
Fucking hell, yeah. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is some of you people who do not jazz it out. That's he's using that as like, let's go party, like a verb.
They'd be wildin'.
Yeah, Jesus. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fantasy. He's not met Sauron, but the Axeman. So that was his bizarre letter, and I don't know what to say.
Do you know what it is? I don't even think that letter was written by the Axeman. I think it was like a university student who was just like playing a prank, because it's A, very, very well written, B, very, very dramatic, and C, this is no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to say with reference to hell and the angels and Tartarus, I think it's a history, a mythology history major,
definitely.
And I genuinely think it's a drunken bet that see if A, they can get it published, and B, if they can get people to jazz it out.
And they did. Idiots.
Because, there was no actual attacks on this night. That was March the 13th. There was some previous and some afterwards, but on this actual night, there wasn't any attacks. So, maybe because everyone was jazzing it out, all the bars and clubs were actually packed, and the people that didn't go out to bars and clubs, they actually hired amateur and professional jazz musicians to come to their home and just play jazz.
Yeah.
And there's a very, I don't know about famous, but there's a piece of music that was called The Mysterious Axeman's Jazz, Don't Scare Me Papa by Joseph John Davila. And after the letter was published, he composed this song and he made quite a bit of money out of it.
I bet.
I don't see how, though, but that's just my particular music taste.
I have yet to hear it. Now I feel like I have to listen to it to find out how terrible it is. It's probably copyrighted, to be honest with you, or else I'd play it. But it's on YouTube. So yeah, just have a gander. Do you know what it is though? There was no murders on that night because everywhere was packed. Like, you're not going to... There was no opportunity to pick off singular people that were asleep because everywhere was jazzing it up. There's too many people. That's why no one died. It wasn't because they were playing jazz music or because the Axeman wrote that letter. It's because there was too many people to attack in one room. They were all awake.
Could be, or he could have just been like out of town.
Yeah.
And thought, you know what's going to be a laugh? I'll get these idiots dancing.
Definitely.
But yeah, so I mean, jazz. Personally, I'm not a fan of it, but it was born out of ragtime music, which I did a little looking into it. I didn't actually know. And if you don't know ragtime music, one of the most famous songs, well, famous for me at least, most recognisable, is "The Entertainer" by Scott Joplin, 1902, which is a theme tune to The Sting with Robert Redford and Paul Newman. It's been in countless others, but it's the one that goes do 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 do.
Yes, I like that.
Yeah.
Like what they were playing in a saloon in Red Dead Redemption.
Yes, exactly that kind of music, and it was born out of that. It kind of in and around New Orleans, but African Americans in the First World War, in the bands in the First World War, were the first to kind of experiment to syncopate and change up the notes and the rhythms to going slow to fast to up and down kind of thing, and it really took off in New Orleans. And it was around about this time that it was starting to actually to blossom into what we would know later on in the 50s and 60s. And you have to say this episode, and certainly this letter, helped propel that jazz into the mainstream. Maybe not into the mainstream, but it certainly gave it a massive, massive push.
Definitely. That was somebody who definitely wasn't going to waste that opportunity.
Exactly. And that's kind of one of the most American things about this. Like,
yes.
They profited off the back of an unfortunate incident.
Yeah. Never a wasted moment.
But the victims, a lot of them, well, all of them, the majority of them, were Italian Americans. The first victims were Joseph and Catherine Maggio, 23rd of May, 1918. Now, there's a few of them that you look at and go,
It's not the same person.
Yeah. So the Maggios were discovered by Joseph's brother, who lived in the adjoining apartment. The couple had their throat slit with a straight razor. Catherine was so badly attacked that her head was nearly severed from her shoulders. And the killer, for whatever reason, bashed their heads with an axe as well on the way out. He actually changed his clothes at the scene, as the police found his clothes covered in blood.
Yeah.
And a bloody razor was found on the lawn of a neighbour's. And valuables were never taken. There was some in plain sight. They were never taken. Now, the razor belonged to Joseph's brother, Andrew, who was a barber and who was the person that actually found them. Now, Andrew lived in the adjoining apartment, and he didn't find them until 2 hours after the attack. I mean, to be honest with you, if you had your head's almost been nearly severed from your shoulders, if it's that vicious an attack, then it's going to create a lot of noise.
One would assume, yes.
Yeah, so Andrew's literally in the next room. He's taken the straight razor home from his work to get a nick taken out of it, and that happens to be the murder weapon. And conveniently or not, he'd been out celebrating because he got into the Navy. He'd had one too many shandies and didn't hear anything. And only he woke up as Joseph was kind of in his death throes, I would assume, because he didn't wake up to he woke up to him coughing, and he heard noise, that kind of noise coming from the apartment, but not a big commotion. So
I think even if you're passed out blind drunk, bashing someone's head in with an axe, like you say, is going to generate a lot of noise. I think even if you're passed out blind drunk, that's probably still going to wake you up.
Yeah. And I mean, the fact that the killer had the audacity to change his clothes, he knew he had that kind of time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So either he knew Andrew was that drunk and he wasn't going to wake up, or...
He was Andrew.
Yeah, really? But the police questioned him and he was released because he just kept to his story. He never changed his statement and they couldn't find any holes in it.
Do you know what, right? Apparently there was a message discovered on the pavement nearby which said, it was written in chalk and it said, "Mrs. Maggio will sit up tonight just like Mrs. Tony." Now that was referring to a previous murder that was committed between 1911 and 1912, in which the victim, who was Mrs. Tony Chiambra, was killed by an axe-wielding man. So that's still kind of, it's almost like they wanted to pin the blame on somebody else, so it could very well have been Andrew, who knew about a previous crime and thought, I'll make it look like it could be somebody completely different who has already committed a murder that I know about, that I read in the paper. So they'll definitely know it wasn't me.
Yeah.
But then nothing was followed up with that.
I mean, I do know that one of the chief of police in New Orleans, they did try and look at connecting the murders in 1911 and 1912 to this one, but it's not in the official. I think it was just more hearsay rather than the evidence. It was done with an axe. There was a lot of axe murders back then.
Do you think Andrew would have had a key to his brother's apartment?
Yeah.
So then why did they enter via the back door panel using a chisel? He could have just unlocked it and then locked it behind him. But
then that's if you're doing that, then obviously the police are going to come up. I mean, I know it's 1918, but the police are going to come up and go, hang on a minute, someone came in here with a key. Who's got a key? Mm-hmm. And then he's got a key. So if you're chiseling out panels...
True. Yeah, but I guess with that logic, if you're making so much noise bashing people's head in with an axe, let yourself in with a key rather than running the risk of chiseling through your brother's back door and run the risk of waking him up. Open the door with a key, then bash their heads in, and then break a window, make it look like somebody broke in through the window. Do you know what I mean? Like, he's wasting a lot of time chiseling out people's back door panels and hoping that they don't wake up and open the back door and go, "What are you doing to my back door?"
It's worrying how much thought you've put into this, I'll be honest.
It's all these serial killer podcasts we keep doing. I think I could probably get away with it.
Woken something inside you.
I think so.
You know, all right. Well, good luck, Dave.
Oh, also, they were grocers.
Yes, so a lot of these victims were grocers.
Italian grocers.
Well, we'll get on to that in a bit because there is a little bit of kind of the suspects of who may have done it, but the majority of these victims were grocers, shop owners. They were of Italian or Sicilian descent, and they were just normal, run-of-the-mill, everyday people. To most extents, they weren't involved in crime, so it's not really like vendettas or anything like that the police have said. It's just they've just been randomly attacked. Next was Louis Bissouma and Harriet Lowe in June 27th, 1918. This is bizarre. Both were struck with a hatchet in the head. Lewis suffered a possible fractured skull and Harriet was knocked unconscious by a blow over her left ear. They were discovered by a baker, John Azanka, making a delivery to their store in the morning as they lay in a pool of blood. Said he was sleeping when he was struck with the axe, which was his own, and found bloodied in the bathroom. Police arrested an African American, obviously, who was employed in the store just a week previous, but he was later released due to lack of evidence. Now, Harriet became quite the media sensation because she liked to talk a bit, She made scandalous and false statements. Most were about the attack and about Basuma's character, but she also had a go at the New Orleans police chief and refused to cooperate with the police. And to top it all off, she wasn't his wife, she was just his lover. And the media went crazy for that as well.
Yeah.
She also claimed that Lewis was a spy, and when letters in German, Russian and Yiddish were found in his apartment, he was arrested. And then Harriet, on a deathbed after a botched surgery to repair her partially paralysed face from this incident, told authorities that she suspected it was Lewis that attacked her, and he was charged with murder, served 9 months before the charge was thrown out and found not guilty. So
she's just a Billy bullshitter, really, isn't she?
Yeah, she's a little bit crazy, that one.
Yes. I mean, those letters are proper suspicious, but I mean, you presumably, if your partner decided to smash you over the head with an axe or something, you would probably remember that it was them that did it without waiting, until a few weeks later and going, actually, do you know what? I think it was my boyfriend. Now that I've thought about it.
And literally, like, with your last breath, like, oh, you know what? I'm going to stitch him right up.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then claiming that he's a spy of all the things.
Yeah, as if he did it wasn't enough.
Yeah, it's just... But she was like... Apparently she had reporters around her bedside all the time because she was just one of them... I suppose you call them Trump supporters nowadays, but one of those people that just like says what the first thing that comes into her mind and doesn't go through the filtering process between brain and mouth.
Yeah. And she clearly loved the attention.
Yeah. I think that was the main thing as well. And she was his mistress rather than his wife, so she was kind of always in the background, and I think maybe she was kind of lying to get his attention more than the national newspapers. And then Basuma's wife actually came into town a week after the attack, but after she left and Harriet and Lewis were let go from the hospital, they both moved back in together. So I don't know what kind of relationship was going on there, but yeah. The next victim was Anna Schneider, August 5th, 1918. She was actually 8 months pregnant when she woke up with a dark figure standing over her, and she was bashed in the head repeatedly. She was discovered just after midnight by her husband. A scalp had been cut open and her face was covered in blood. She remembered nothing of the attack, but 2 days later she did give birth to a healthy baby girl, which is a nice ending to that one.
Yeah, she's a bit of a warrior, really, isn't she?
Yeah, indeed. Hard as nails.
This one was a bit. I was a bit because the MO is the same. However, they weren't grocers, and her husband said that nothing was taken other than $6 or $7 that had been stolen from his wallet.
Yeah, which I saw that, and I found that a little bit, because even when stuff has been on full view in the Maggio's house, there was stuff in plain view that the killer could have took.
Yeah.
So why is he going into a wallet now?
For $7, yeah.
And why was the wallet at home yet the husband wasn't?
Yeah, good point, actually.
Because if the husband's come back to find her...
Yeah,
then...
Good point.
Yeah, that one.
You would bring your wallet to work, wouldn't you?
Yeah, exactly. You'd take it wherever you went, with you, surely. I mean, I'd have.
Yeah, very suspicious.
Yeah, this one is, And again, she's not of Italian descent, and they're not grocers. So I think this one could be a case of, again, they've read it in the paper, things are going on, could get away with this. Maybe
yes,
he didn't want to be a daddy. And
yeah. Maybe he had a secret mistress.
Maybe. Seems like they all did back then. What a time to be alive. So, the next victim was Joseph Romano. This was August the 10th, 1918. This was an elderly gentleman who lived with his two nieces. Not even going to get into that and what that means. I'm just going to swerve that one. On the night, the nieces awoke to a commotion in his room and found he had received a blow to his head. Even though Romano was able to walk to the ambulance, he died of severe head trauma 2 days later. So, I don't know if that's... I think that's just bad doctoring, really, because...
Really?
If he can get up and out, he's good enough, but then maybe they just left him there.
Yeah. His nieces said they saw a dark-skinned, heavy-set man wearing a suit and a slouched hat fleeing the scene as well. And, again, nothing had been stolen, but it did say that the home had been ransacked, which is not all of the other... none of the other homes were ransacked.
No.
But they were grocers, and the break-in was via the back door panel using a chisel.
Yeah. Now, I think if you're of the more, what's the word, creative kind of criminal burglar, you might be starting to use this in your MO kind of thing just to deflect it.
Yes.
But this was a murder that started to cause panic.
Clearly.
In New Orleans, and people started to see axemen lurking on corners, in dark alleys, on the bus. They
probably were.
Yeah, they started seeing them everywhere, and with good reason, because there's possibly 3 wandering around with this one. The next family is the Cortimiglia family, and this was 3 days before the letter was sent on the 10th of March, 1919. A neighbour, this one is like just horrible, because a neighbour was alerted to screams coming from the Cortimiglia household. Yolando Giordano ran across the road to find Rosie, the elder woman, I don't want to say wife, but the elder woman, Rosie Cortimiglia, stood in the doorway with a serious head wound holding a 2-year-old daughter. And Charles Cortimiglia lay on the floor, bleeding heavily. They were rushed to the hospital, and both husband and wife had skull fractures. Sadly, Mary, the 2-year-old daughter, had been murdered as she was sleeping in her mother's arms when the attack started. Again, a panel from the back door had been removed and an axe was found on the back doorstep. When Rosie came to and regained consciousness, she actually claimed that it was Orlando and his son that had attacked her.
It's just rude.
Yeah, even though Orlando was 69 and in bad health, and his 18-year-old son was 6 foot tall and 90 kilos and couldn't have fit through the panel that was taken off the door. But, as is the American way, they were both charged with attempted murder, and Orlando got a life sentence. His son got sentenced to death. But, luckily, I mean, I don't know, maybe they did do it, but the evidence doesn't stack up.
It does not. Their
sentences were overturned a year later, and they were let go. But that's just...
Well, Rosie did say, didn't she? It's one of the sources says that she admitted that she lied out of spite and jealousy, and that it wasn't them because they were like competing grocers kind of thing. But I read an article in the Smithsonian which said that the doctor who attended Rosie said she always claimed she did not know who attacked her. And apparently when she got out of hospital, she was brought in for questioning by the police, and she was only released after being forced to sign an affidavit implicating her neighbours. So it's hard to say whether or not she lied out of spite, or whether the police were so desperate to catch somebody that they just wanted to pin the blame on anybody, and they thought, like, you're not getting out of here until you sign this to say that your neighbours did it, and then few will have caught the guys. Pretend. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, and then they can have some calm on the streets.
Yeah.
It puts that kind of peace of mind back into the public
Yeah.
if they make this big show of having someone, of course. So yeah, they're getting desperate at this point. They just want to kind of just make it all stop. But then 3 days later, the newspaper received the jazzy letter, and it all went quiet until the August the 10th, 1919. And Steve Bocher was a grocer who was attacked in his sleep. He was unconscious from the attack. When he came around, he ran out to the street and found he had a head wound. He ran to his neighbours, but he passed out on arrival. He was taken to the hospital. He recovered from his injuries, but never remembered what happened during the attack. Again, panel on the back door had been taken out and nothing had been taken from the address.
Yep.
So this was the first attack after the letter. And Sarah Lauman was the next on September the 3rd, 1919. She was discovered unconscious on her bed after neighbours were worried when she didn't answer the door. I mean, nosy much?
Curtain twitching neighbours.
Oh. But luckily they did, because she was suffering from a severe head injury and she was missing several teeth. Again, a bloody axe was found in the vicinity on the front lawn, and Sarah recovered from her injuries but never remembered the attack. Now, maybe the last attack was Mike Pepitone on October 27th, 1919. He was attacked in his own bedroom, and his wife saw a large axe-wielding man fleeing out of the bedroom. He'd been struck in the head and was covered in his own blood. Now, this one may have been down to some kind of vendetta, because there was a lot of... Mike Pepitone wasn't the one of the nicest people. He fell in with a few rough characters, apparently. Mm. I can't remember how the story goes, but I think his wife ended up shooting the person that was responsible for this attack in
She did.
LA or California.
Yeah, because she had two husbands, didn't she? And this man, she was convinced was responsible for... so her first husband, Mike, was killed by the Axeman.
Yeah.
But then her second husband just disappeared one day and vanished out of existence. And when she was the next person to kind of get attacked, and she just kind of thought, I don't think so. And she shot the attacker dead, as you do, because she's badass.
Yeah.
And she was convinced that it was him that got rid of both her husbands, and it was like some sort of blackmailing ring gang thing.
Yeah, and he was one of the... Is it Joseph Mumfrey?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's one of the suspects for all of these attacks, and he kind of maybe tagged on Mike at the end, just as kind of a vendetta.
Yeah.
But with all the victims, like we were saying, they were all grocers. They were all most were of Italian or Sicilian descent. Now, the Lower French Quarter in New Orleans was actually called Little Palmero because there were that many Sicilians and Italians there. And the Sicilians, when they came to America... when they went to the South, they didn't know about, I'm going to call it the social hierarchy. So they would work in any job that you gave them. So they didn't mind being a street cleaner. They didn't mind working on the plantations. They didn't mind doing whatever you asked them to do. So a lot of them went and worked on the plantations. And for other, quotation marks, white people, that was a job that was beneath them. And this, they kind of put, the upper class white people kind of put Sicilians in the same bracket as the African Americans and the Chinese of the time. So they really weren't, I'm trying to tiptoe this one, but they really weren't seen as other white people.
Yeah.
And at the time, obviously, 1918, this is when they've not, and it's in the south as well, so they're still chained to that plantation owner, that slavery, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the Sicilians were kind of seen as second-class citizens, as were the African Americans and the Chinese. The plantation owners liked having them on working because of their work ethic, but it was kind of a drawback because they would complain that as soon as they'd laid enough money aside, they'd be ready to start a fruit shop or a grocery at some crossroads town.
Well, fair play to them.
Yeah, exactly. It's the American dream, isn't it? You go and work for a bit, put some money aside, then start your own business.
Yeah, they've worked hard. Fair play to them.
Indeed. And for the Italian Americans in the South, in New Orleans at least, they would work in the fields at first, then they'd save enough money to get a small farm and then sell their own goods at market, and then from there they'd go on to own a grocery store. And in 1880, 7% of grocery stores in New Orleans were owned by Italian Americans. By 1920, it was about 50%. So
yeah,
they were pretty much exclusively grocers. I don't want to stereotype, but that was kind of the trajectory that they took. Now, with them owning shops, there's always the kind of extortion will always come along with it. In Sicily, in Italy, I'm not going to say because it's not my cultural heritage, so I can't really say how it is, but from what I have read, it's more of extortion is more of a cultural thing there. It's not seen as necessarily a bad thing, but you have people coming around asking you don't want your goods to get destroyed, you want everything coming in on time, if you pay us a little bit of money every week, we can look after that. Now, I'm not saying that it was just every gang does this, every cultural gang does it, whether they're black, whether they're Chinese, whether they're Sicilian. But because
look at the Peaky Blinders, even the Brummies do it.
Exactly. It's the
easiest way to make money if you're a gang, innit?
That's it. It's gang 101. Yeah. That's the first thing you start doing. It's extortion and gambling, because it's two things people are always going to use and need.
Yeah.
Now, because by 1920, 50% of the stores, the grocery stores, were owned by Italian Americans, if you're saying that this extortion was going on, then they're keeping it in their own community, obviously you can kind of think, well, okay, the mafia's involved. And it was so, because of the numbers and the statistics that you're looking at, the actual extortion was called a black hand extortion, which is where you go in and you shake down the owners. But by this time, during when these murders were happening, black hand and mafia had become interchangeable. It wasn't the actual extortion, it was the name of the Italian American gang, if you will. And even in press and in police, they interchanged it. So there was a lot of cultural racism towards the Italian Americans. Now, whether these murders were done by this, they weren't really done by anyone trying to shake them down, because dead people don't pay. That's the first thing you would learn. You just mess them up a little bit. And plus the fact, there's easier ways to do it. You can just disrupt everything rather than go in. You don't need to go in the middle of the night. And plus, by this time, the Italian American community, when this kind of thing happened, they kept it in between themselves. They didn't go to the police. They never grasped. It was something that happened, you dealt with it, and then you moved on.
Yeah.
So I don't really think it was the mafia. It may have been a massive racist who was upset that the Sicilians, Italians were coming in, taking our jobs, even though none of the people wanted to work in the fields and do it the way that they had done it.
Exactly, yeah.
As well, like we said towards the beginning, there's got to be more than one going on here.
Well, I mean, to be fair, Joseph Mumfrey, after he was shot dead by Mrs. Peppertoni, the murders did stop, which kind of makes it look like he was good for it. But, so I have so many issues with these, right? Okay, so there's either a series of copycats, because it was highly publicised, but if it was just one person, why were the attacks so half-arsed? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you're going to bash somebody's head in, presumably they're going to see your face because they're close enough to be hitting you in the head with an axe. Now, if you don't do it properly, like this alleged one person didn't, half of his victims actually survived and would have been able to identify him. Why would you not make a proper job of it? Why would you not make sure they're dead before you leave? Do you know what I mean? If it was one person.
Yeah.
Also, if it was the same person, presumably after a few murders, you'd have got the hang of things, and practice would mean that the victims would progressively have endured more fatal wounds. He would have finished the job off properly. There wouldn't have been any witnesses. Do you know what I mean? It does seem to be racially motivated, and weirdly, the detectives at the time, they stated that women were the primary targets, but I think that's absolute bull. It's not women. It's just anyone who's a grocer and Italian and fair game.
I did see that they said that he only attacked the men that got in their way.
Yeah.
But then people were attacked in their sleep.
Yeah.
So I don't really understand that. As well, in the 1920s, there was other attacks that used the same MO. I think there was 4 other killings in 3 attacks, which involved Italian grocers. They were broken into during the night, and they were all attacked with an axe. And there's newspaper evidence and actual police evidence that have them on it. 1920, 1921. So there was still attacks going on, but this wasn't in New Orleans. This was in Louisiana itself. So maybe he moved on, or maybe it was just a way to attack people. I mean, to be honest with you, there seems like there's quite a lot of axes about at this time, so maybe it's the weapon of choice.
Well, it just seems like because the press were all over it, like a bad rash, that if you wanted to, fill somebody in, it was the easiest way to get away with it, wasn't it? It was the Axeman, it wasn't me.
Yeah, if you wanted to hide it. I mean, I think for me, the Pepitone is a little bit, The Maggio's is definitely a little bit odd as well, because I don't understand how Andrew couldn't wake up and hear this kerfuffle going on.
Yes.
Even the second one, with Harriet Lowe and Louis Basuma, there's so much that goes on in that one.
Yeah.
But like you say, I think it's not a proper serial killer, if you know what I mean, because like you say, he's letting people live.
Yeah.
He's not being diligent about his work. I just think, but then nothing's been robbed, nothing's been taken.
It makes you think that it's just somebody who's a massive racist against the Italians and is just wanting to just rough people up. Like maybe, like obviously the first one, the murder intent was there clearly. Mrs. Maggio was nearly decapitated, but the others, I just don't understand how you can attack somebody with an axe, and if you mean to kill them, they would be dead. It's almost like they just wanted to rough people up quite substantially, as opposed to killing them, to make the entire community scared.
Yeah. I mean, maybe that's what it is. Maybe there's just the kind of, maybe it was extortion, and they just broke in, made them scared, and they didn't want to kill them. With the 6 that was killed, maybe that was just people who copycats. Maybe they wanted to go after them.
Yeah. Or maybe they didn't. Maybe they got a bit too. Maybe those people were more delicate than the others.
Yeah, they may have got a little bit carried away with what they were doing.
Because if you wanted to kill somebody with an axe, would you not bash them unconscious first and then just hack their head off? Is that not the easiest way to make sure that they're definitely dead?
I mean, to be honest with you, one blow with an axe to your head. I mean, I think that'd be yowzers. I'm not.
Well, yeah, but it didn't kill a lot of them, did it?
No, maybe he's just not a good axman.
This terrible serial killer.
Yeah, I don't.
You leave nearly all of your victims alive.
Yeah, maybe
that's the opposite of being a good serial killer.
Maybe the axman, or this murderer at least, was the only person in New Orleans that didn't have an axe. He didn't know how to use it, so he had to use everyone else's, and he couldn't kill him on the first blow. Maybe that's why he was the one person. I feel like I've missed out. I'm gonna have to steal people's axes and have a go and see what it's like. But there was no wood.
I mean, it sounds a little bit like he was holding the wrong end of the axe when he was hitting these people.
Or just poking them with it.
Yeah, just hitting me with the stick end of the axe.
Yeah, because there's two sides to it. There's two sides to an axe, but there's the sharp end and then the blunt end. And if you twat someone with it, either side, it's gonna fucking sting, especially on the head. So how are you doing it wrong?
Exactly. Ideally, I'm not a serial killer, but I'm also, I guess I am sometimes a little bit of an idiot. But if I had an axe and I was going to hit somebody with it, I would make sure that the sharp end was the bit that was going to connect with them.
The sharp end.
Do you know what I mean? Hit them with the pointy end, kind of deal.
Jesus.
Don't hit them with. Do you know what I mean? Though, you would aim. I mean, when anybody holds an axe, you wouldn't chop wood with the other side, with the not sharp side. So why would you come at somebody without?
Yeah.
I feel like it's just a really bad job.
I think Dave's safe, to be honest. Yeah, I think there's more than one thing going on here.
Definitely.
And again, it's one of them. It's 1918. It's when the police aren't as au fait to criminal investigation. To be honest with you, I think the police force had just been formed, and whether it had any kind of semblance of investigations and whatnot. And I think they just saw something looking like a duck, quacking like a duck, and walking like a duck, and they've just gone, it's a duck. All these 12 attacks are from the Jazzman. It must be, and the letter as well. I mean, that's just.
Anyone who does a half-assed job at an axe murder did not write that letter.
Yeah, there you go. You see, he didn't know which end's the pointy end, so how does he know what came to Taurus is? Jesus Christ.
Exactly.
So
whoever it was that killed those people did not write that goddamn letter. That was clearly a university student.
Yeah, it's
having a laugh.
It's someone with too much, well, not too much education, but someone with education. Whereas from what witnesses have said, I mean, okay, maybe I'm being stereotypical, but witnesses have said the Axeman was a big gentleman. In my experience, big gentlemen don't really read the classics, you know?
Well, you know he left his clothes at the scene of the crime on the very first murders. Why didn't they take those and go, yeah, was a big bloke? Or, well, you said you saw a big bloke, but these clothes are clearly only a 20-inch waist. So this is a different person.
See, this is where I think the investigations that the police did or didn't do, I think this is where it starts to kind of add up. Because they didn't even search the house after the bodies were removed. They just had a look around when the bodies were there. And they went, oh, bits and pieces here. Yeah, good.
He's hiding under the bed the whole time.
Do you know what? Probably could have been. So I think that I don't think they had any kind of form of organisation to this. And they just, especially with the way they've tried to charge Louis Basuma with being a spy, and then they go and charge Orlando, who's a 69-year-old man. What's he going to do? Like...
Exactly.
I just think they just went... At that point, definitely, when they were with the Orlando, definitely at that point, I think it was they were panicking. They need to get someone and just make sure the public see that they've got someone. But in the lead up to that, I don't think they had any intention of trying to do anything, unless, like in Lewis's case, someone actually directly told them what was happening, which, although it was Harriet Lowe, and she didn't know the truth from her elbow, let's say.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was this, looking at this, it's more than one person. And the person that actually did the killings was either a massive racist or someone with an organisation trying to kind of shake them down. I think this is at least two different cases that have just been pushed into one just because they've got the same kind of MO.
Yes, I believe it's called case blindness. Apparently, when you stop seeing the cases as individual cases, you just go, it must be the same person. And you mould them all into one case, and you're wrong.
I mean, we have seen this before, haven't we?
We have.
And we'll probably see it again.
Yeah, we probably will.
As well, but I mean, more so during this period of time, that I think that they'd throw cases together like this and just go, no, it's all the same kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the story of the New Orleans Axeman.
Or Axmen.
Or Axemen. Or Axewomen.
Axewomen.
Let's, come on now. It's 2020.
No, poison is a woman's weapon. We wouldn't use an axe.
Fucking a tongue is a woman's weapon, I tell you that. Jesus Christ. But on that bombshell, this was the MO podcast. Thank you all for joining us. I've been Contumacious Ant.
And I've been Atreya.
Thank you so much, and hopefully we shall see you next time.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.